Right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back, Social Studies 7. Now, first thing for you to work on today is that before we do anything else, I'd like you to go to Module 3 in Canvas and open up the CER assignment. You didn't have access to that until this morning, but it should be open now. So let me go to that and I'll show you how to get into there. Let's see, let me let some people in. Okay, so going to just our home page, I'm going to click on modules. And scroll down to module 3, so our module for this week, and then you'll go to your Gupta Golden Age, Gupta Golden Age CER. Okay, and that's what we're going to be working on today. And the slides that I'm going to show you today are to help you work through that CER. So if you're following along really well and working on the CER as we go, then you'll be almost done with it by the time that we're done with class. Okay, so I'll click on that CER assignment. And when you get into this, you'll see that it's another tool that needs to be loaded, and I've made it load into another browser for you so that it opens up another tab. So you'll click here and it'll open up a new Google Doc for you. Okay, and this is your Google Doc to type into and then to turn in when you're done with it. Okay, and I'll give it a second. Okay, and here's your CER. Okay, and you'll see that if you want to come back and work on the CER later, so if you don't finish it during VC, which you probably won't get completely finished, I just want to give you a really good start on it. You'll click here so you can review the slides that we're going to use today, and you can click here too for an article for more information if you need it. Okay, let's let some people in. Okay, so let me give you just a moment. Everyone, please make sure to open that CER assignment. And let me go back so that you can see where it was. Okay, so module 3, very last assignment, the CER. Okay, all right, and then the stuff that I want to teach you to do that assignment is quite a bit of information for us to work on today. So I'm going to get started right away and go through these. So please follow along, and then I'll stop in the presentation and say, this is the time to fill in this part of the CER, or this is where you make this decision for the CER. Okay. Let's see, how's my daughter? You just saw Lindsay. Okay, all right, so we are talking about the Gupta Golden Age. So this is the Golden Age of India. And this is, I love Golden Ages. I think these times of when people are doing all sorts of cultural things, and they're coming up with all sorts of advancements and achievements, is a really cool time because there's so much art and culture that we can look back on in the archaeological and historical record. And I love that stuff. I love to see what people were doing, not just what was written in history. This is the actual stuff that you can hold and see. And I think that's really cool. Okay, so before we get started, before we get started, let's review a little bit about what we've learned about India so far. So if you've done your modules up to now, here's what we've learned. There we go. First, we learned about the ancient Indus Valley. That was Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. They were very advanced, and you guys know that the sewer system, I think, is so cool. I love the sewer system that they had because it's so early for them to have a system like that worked so well. And they also had a writing system that we can't translate. We still don't know what it says. And nobody really knows why these cities were abandoned. Okay, the next thing that we learned was about the Vedic period. This was when the Aryan people migrated down from the north, and they joined with the people that were already in India or in the peninsula, and they developed Hinduism, the caste system, Sanskrit, and that's just to name a little bit. They really built an entire society. All right, then we learned about, so that was a focus on Hinduism last week, and then we learned about Buddhism. And I'm not going to read that whole thing to you, but Siddhartha Gautama was a prince who was living this wonderful, comfortable life, but he felt like something was missing. So he left his royal life and tried to figure out how in this world do we escape suffering. And he spent a lot of time meditating under a tree, and that was how he came across his basic ideas of how we were supposed to live life. He said there were 4 noble truths and that we have to follow the 8-fold path, and that's how you find enlightenment. And when he found enlightenment, his name changed to the Buddha. And this was the start of Buddhism. Okay, right, and then the last one for this unit that we learned so far was about the Mauryan Empire. The Mauryan Empire was when India was united for the first time under one ruler. And that was a big deal because before that, it was lots and lots of different groups, and there was Greeks coming in. Alexander the Great came in and ruled part of India. And so this is the first time that India is all together in one group. There was one of the Mauryan emperors was named Ashoka, and after conquering an area called Kalinga, he felt so bad about everything that he'd done during the war that he decided to become a Buddhist and give up all violence. And then he spread Buddhism through the empire, saying, this is our official religion now. And he did that by writing edicts on pillars that he placed throughout India. Okay, let me go out of this for a second so I can let some people in. Go ahead and take a look at that slide while I'm clicking the buttons. Here we go. Okay, all right, so that brings us to what we're learning this week about India, and that's the Gupta Empire. So the Mauryan Empire sort of faded out like empires do. And this map on the left with the purple is the Mauryan Empire. So that purple is the area that they ruled in India. And then this is the Gupta Empire. So 500 years passed after the fall of the Mauryan Empire, and then the Gupta dynasty rules. And that's this orange area. So the Gupta dynasty takes over and ruled from 320 to 540 CE. The Guptas, so unlike in the Mauryan Empire when Ashoka went out and spread Buddhism, the Guptas were Hindus. Okay? But they also tolerated Buddhist and Jain religions. So Buddhism and Jain religions are related to Hinduism. They're very similar in a lot of ways, but separate and different religions. The Gupta emperors, and this is really important, the Gupta emperors were really strong rulers. They were really organized, and they were really good at ruling. Okay, so and that makes a big difference in what we're going to talk about next. Okay, because they were good rulers, they were good administrators, and they ruled well. Okay, sorry, I've got to let somebody else in again. They ruled well. That meant that they led a time of prosperity. Oh, and Elena asked if you needed to type anything yet. You do not need to yet. I will, I'll have a slide that tells you when to do that. Okay, and let's let people in. Okay, all right, so because the Guptas are such good rulers, people are doing really well. And let's talk about that. All right, so first of all, I keep talking about this golden age. What is a golden age anyway? A golden age is a time when culture thrives. There's usually peace and prosperity, and it's often marked by a great output of the arts. And when I say arts, I mean creative things, not necessarily just like paintings, but anything creative for your culture. So this makes sense because when people are stressed, when they're worried about their food and their shelter, their basic necessities, they don't feel very creative. But when people have food and shelter and peace, then they start feeling creative and they make advancements that help humanity from then on. One thing to think about is that like when COVID first started, you know, everybody was sort of stressed about what do? We have to get all these supplies, and there was no toilet paper and all these kind of bizarre things we never expected. And it was hard for people to feel creative or do the fun things because we were so worried about the necessity parts of things. And that's true of golden ages too. If you're not comfortable in your basics, then you can't have all the advancements in creativity. Okay, now let's tie it back to the Egyptians. If you remember this slide from when we did the Nile River tour, the Egyptians had a lot of ups and downs, right? They had the Old Kingdom was an up, intermediate period was a down, Middle Kingdom up, and so on. These are golden ages. So these are times of peace and prosperity, and all sorts of advancements took place. And then down here, they're really just worried about their necessities. All right, so what did the Guptas do that was so great? One of the things that they did is that they built really good roads. So people could travel all over that part of the world. I mean, take a look at this map. Here's India here, way over to China over here, way over to Arabia over here, and continuing on all the way over to Rome. So really long, really good roads and trade routes, which means they weren't just trading things, goods, they were also trading ideas. And we'll see that a lot of the things that started in India traveled through Arabia and to the Western world as well. They also established universities, and this is a picture of the of Nalanda, the university at Nalanda. This is the remains of it. It was a really big university. Students came from all over Asia to go to these universities and learn. Some universities were Hindu. They were all religion based. Some were Hindu and some were Buddhist. Students from upper classes came and they learned all sorts of things: religion, philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, chemistry, Sanskrit, sculpture, painting, music, dancing, everything. Most of the students were male, but if a teacher had a daughter, that daughter would be allowed to go to school there as well. So there were some women in the school also. Okay, so they had an exchange of ideas through the roads, and they had this exchange of ideas and growth of ideas in the universities. Okay, so that leads us to the achievements, and these are what you're going to focus on for your CER. So in the Golden Age, during the Gupta Golden Age, all of these things led to achievements during a golden age. Here's a list of the ones that we'll focus on, and we've just sort of categorized everything into these. So you'll either talk in your CER about mathematics, literature, art, science and technology, or medicine. Okay, all right, so just take a moment, think about those, and I'm going to tell you about each of those. As I'm telling you about those, you decide which one you think is the most important. Okay, so this is your first place to go look at that CER. So it says, as you learn about the Golden Age achievements, and that's what I'm teaching you next, you'll prepare your claim, evidence, and reasoning to answer this question. So here's your claim question. Which of the Gupta Golden Age achievements had the greatest impact on future societies? So which one is the most important for humans that came after? Okay. Right, so if you haven't done so already, please make sure to open your CER assignment in Module 3, and then you'll be working in your own Google Doc. Okay. All right, so let's continue. One of those categories was mathematics. So much of what we know of mathematics today, and just basically numbers, comes from India. We call the kind of numbers that we use Arabic numerals, but they're actually from India. They're Indian numerals, and you'll see why in a second. The Gupta Golden Age is also when they came up with the idea of zero, which is such a thing that, like, a concept that we're so used to, we don't even think that that had to be invented, but it did. So they came up with the idea of zero. They came up with a decimal-based system of 10 digits, and I'll explain that, or this video will explain that to you. And they calculated the value of pi. Okay, so let's watch this video. It explains a little bit about what I'm talking about.
Literature. Just as an example, by looking at lunar eclipses, mathematician Aryabhatta theorized that the Earth was indeed round and spun on its axis, something Eratosthenes had already worked out half a millennium prior, but give him a break, news was very slow back then. It was also worked out that the planets don't shine from their own light, but rather by reflecting the light of the sun. Of course, had they wanted to measure the circumference of the spherical Earth, they did also come up with an invention that could help them do so, something as revolutionary even to this day as it was obvious in hindsight. For that, we will need to count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. It was around this time that— No, cut the Vsauce music, this is the Canubis video. It was around this time that the base 10 positional numeral system that we still use to this day was invented in India, having spread to the west via Arabia, hence as to why we call them Arabic numerals, and proving as useful there and in Europe as in India. Beforehand, Roman numerals were the norm, but if you're not used to using them, they can be a bit clunky, since you have to look very closely at the order of the letters to determine their meaning, and they can get very long. For instance, around what year did the Gupta Empire fall? Well, in Roman numerals, DXLIII. Okay, so that's a 500 plus a 10, no, plus a 50 minus a 10 plus 3 ones. In these new numerals, however, it's trivial. Just set up the number of orders of magnitude that you need, with the help of that very useful number to represent 0, then add 5 100s, 4 10s, and 3 1s. 543 AD. That's not even to mention how the old Roman system stopped adding new characters at 1000, whereas Indian numerals can make numbers not only so much more compact, but also so much bigger. For example, if you look below this video to the subscribe button, you'll see a number that looks like this, but put it in Roman numerals and it looks like someone left the microwave on. Now, enough about numbers, at least before I started losing my audience. This period also saw an
Okay, so that gives us a good introduction to just numbers and mathematics and what was going on with Aryabhatha. He was the mathematician, scientist, philosopher. He did it all. That started figuring out a lot of these things, the circumference of the Earth, these big ideas. And it talks about how those numbers spread. So the reason that we call them Arabic numerals is because the idea spread through the trade routes to Arabia and then eventually to Europe, which is why we use them too. So if you think this is an interesting topic and you're thinking that you might want to talk about mathematics in your CER, you'll want to come back and watch this video. We're not going to do it right now, but it gives you more information on how that number system works.
literature.
Here we go. Okay, so let's talk about literature. Literature also had a golden age during this time, and writers were writing in Sanskrit. They were writing poetry, fables, folk tales, plays, and these stories were so popular. They were the stories that were spread all the way, again, through the trade routes, these ideas spreading through trade routes, to Persia, Egypt, and Greece, and all the way into Europe and the Western world as well. So if you've ever heard the story of Aladdin and his magic lamp, it's a Persian story, but it's actually based on a Gupta folktale. So that's all the way from India as well. One of the main names, or one of the main people that was doing all of this writing, was named Kalidasa. He was the most well-known Gupta poet and playwright. And Chandragupta II, who was one of the emperors, who was the emperor during the Golden Age, was his patron. That meant that he supported the arts and he supported Kalidasa. So let's watch a video about what Kalidasa did. And cool thing about this video is that you'll hear some traditional music in the background too. And we'll talk about music in the next slide.
This is Kalidasa, also known as the servant of Kali. Kalidasa was a classical Sanskrit writer, widely regarded as the greatest poet and dramatist in the Sanskrit language. Today, we will be looking at a translated version of one of his poems, Goeth. Wouldst thou the young year's blossoms and the fruits of its decline, and all by which the soul is charmed, enraptured, feasted, fed? Wouldst thou the earth and heaven itself in one sole name combine? I name thee, O Sankatala, and all at once is said. Kalidasa also wrote a lot of plays in his lifetime. The first play we're going to be talking about is the Apashnanda Sakuntalam. This tells the story of King Dushyanta, who, while on a hunting trip, meets Shankatala, the adopted daughter of a sage, and marries her. A mishap befalls them when he is summoned back to court. Shankatala, pregnant with their child, inadvertently offends a visiting sage and incurs a curse, by which Dushyanta will forget her completely until he sees the ring he has left with her. On her trip to Dushyanta's court in an advanced state of pregnancy, she loses the ring and has to come away unrecognized. The ring is found by a fisherman who recognizes the royal seal and returns it to Dushyanta. He regains his memory of Shankatala and sets out to find her. After more travails, they are finally reunited. The next play we're going to be talking about is the Vikram Morvasyam. This tells a story of mortal king Pururabhas and celestial nymph Urvashi who fall in love. As an immortal, she has to return to the heavens, where an unfortunate accident causes her to be sent back to the earth as a mortal with the curse that she will die, the moment her lover lays his eyes on the child which she will bear to him. After a series of mishaps, including Urvashi's temporary transformation into a vine, the curse is lifted, and the lovers are allowed to remain together on the earth.
Okay. All right, so that's Kalidasa. And one way to try to understand how important Kalidasa was is that he wrote so much and he used Sanskrit in new ways so that it actually changed the language itself from then on. It's sort of like, if you know anything about Shakespeare, it's sort of like what Shakespeare did for English. So Shakespeare is the Kalidasa of English. If we think about it that way, that his plays, he made up so many new words and he used English in new ways, and that's how we used it from then on. It actually changed the language itself. Okay, so art. There's just a flourishing of art during the Gupta Empire. One of those types was sculptures, and there were lots of new temples going up, and stone temples had these sculptures carved into them, into the rock, or there were freestanding sculptures as well. And these are some examples of them. They're pretty amazing, very detailed. Okay, another type of art that was flourishing at the time was dance and music. Okay, hang on one second. I see I have somebody wrote something in the chat. There are, it's not telling me. If you wrote me a question, it's not saying it, but I'll come back to it. Music was often heard in courts. Creative dance was important. And this is a picture. Obviously, it's a modern picture since it's a picture, but a picture of a traditional dance. Okay, oh, Elena, I'm sorry, I didn't see your question. Yes, you pick one of these as your claim. So listen as I teach you each one of them, and then you'll decide which one you think is most important. And you can see that their hands are in very particular positions. It's because each gesture has a special meaning. So their hand gestures are really important. Okay, all right, and then down here, if you're interested in music and the art for your CER, you can come down here and listen to some examples of ancient music, modern examples, but playing ancient music. Okay, other types of art. This is something that I think is particularly cool. It sort of makes me just feel like adventure, like Indiana Jones or something. There are paintings that have just really colorful themes, just lots and lots of paintings inside of caves. And these are temples that were carved into natural cliffs and caves. So here's a picture of them over here, and here's a picture of some of the temples. I love that elephant. That elephant is really cool. The murals cover the walls of 30 caves of this Buddhist monastery in central India. Okay, so here's what the caves look like on the outside. There's the elephant on the outside, so cool. And then here's one of the caves on the inside. So these are not, dark, dirty, wet caves. These are really wonderfully built and carved. Paintings that you would see on the inside. Really bright colors. They've faded now a little bit, but they're actually in pretty good shape. They're pretty well preserved, but lots of reds, lots of purples, lots of greens. And this one's really cool. It's another elephant. I like that elephant. Okay. All right, science and technology. So metalworking was really big at the time, and Gupta crafters were really good with metals. So they made a lot of gold and copper coins and engraved them with pictures that honored the Gupta rulers, that showed their achievements. So here's something really good that Chandragupta II did, and they put it on a coin because coins travel throughout the empire, right? Because you use them to pay for things, and then they end up traveling through the trade routes. So a coin is a really good way. It's like sending out a newsletter. Like here's the newest things that our emperor has done. Now, they're also really famous for working in iron, their ironwork. This is a picture of a pillar that's made of solid iron. It stands 25 feet tall and weighs 13,000 pounds. The sides are engraved with a story that describes a Gupta emperor. Now, what's really amazing about this is that it is 1,600 years old. It's been outside in the rain and the sun that entire time, and it is almost rust-free. So somehow the Gupta metalworkers had enough skill that they knew how to work the iron and how to mix it together and to make these things and make it not rust, which is very cool. All right, the last one for us to talk about is medicine. Okay, medicine also saw a lot of advancements, and the stuff that they were able to do is very cool. This is a picture of an Ayurveda book. Ayurveda means knowledge of life, and that was the type of Indian, or the system of medicine in India. So an Ayurveda text, and it's about anatomy. So this is an anatomy text, and they really studied, all the different things that they could. Doctors used a lot of herbs and medicines to treat diseases, and they did it in a really a really distinct method. So not just trying different things, but in a systematic way. They also could set bones and were skilled at surgery. This is super cool. They used the front claws of giant ants, so the pointy little claws on the front, to stitch up wounds. Okay, so they're making needles out of ant claws, which I guess probably the ants didn't like so much, but it's a pretty neat advancement. They also, this is so amazing, they also started vaccinating people against smallpox. So we're hearing so much about vaccines right now and what a big deal it is and how they develop it and how difficult it is. And now they're trying to make sure, now we've got the vaccine and they're trying to spread it out across the country and give it to people. And something like that started all the way back in the Gupta Empire with smallpox vaccines, that they could understand how to do that is really amazing. Also in the Islamic Empire at the time, they were going through a golden age during their during their golden age, during their empire, and they were doing something similar in a different part of the world, also vaccinating against smallpox. So early vaccinations was their first try at vaccinating. It's pretty cool. Right, so that is your advancements: mathematics, literature, art, science, technology, and medicine. So take a moment and write your claim. So decide which one you think was the most important. And here's a sentence stem you can use if you like. You'll just fill in the blank with one of those achievements. And you'll write, blank is the Gupta Golden Age achievement that had the greatest impact on future societies. So I'll give you a minute just to flip back and forth and write in which one you think is the most important. Okay, all right, and once you've made your decision, let's use the chat to just write, which one did you choose? Zainab, can you see my screen now? Oh, good, okay. Okay, all right, so go ahead and just fill in which one you think is the most important for future societies. Mathematics, literature, art, science, technology, or medicine. You guys maybe can hear my daughter's kindergarten class. She's learning about red too. If you choose multiple, you'll have to give more evidence. I think it'll make it harder for you. I would try to just choose one. It's a good question, Antonio. Elena, you're learning the red. Your sister's learning it too. That's cool. Okay, we had one vote for medicine. What's everyone else thinking? Medicine. Okay. Okay. Keep thinking of those. Everyone should have a claim now. Okay. And remember, there's no right answer to this, guys. There are reasons for each of these to be really important. So right now, I think our brains are really focused on medicine, so that might be where you're going for that one, like in particular right now. All of them are very important. So it really is your choice. The point of a CER is that you back up your reason. Okay, so let's go to the evidence. Okay, this is where you'll need to go back to the slides probably. You'll choose two pieces of evidence that back up your claim. So medicine is the most important achievement. Let's say that you chose medicine. And then you're going to say, as shown by, and then give me a quote or explain in detail what you learned on slide number blank. Okay? And you need 2 of those, and as shown by, and another detail or quote on slide number blank. Okay? All right, so this one is hard for you to do without going back through those slides, but remember at the top of your Google Doc, there's a link to these slides, so you can go back and look specifically at those. Take just 1 minute and give yourself just some quick notes. So if you're saying medicine, you might just remember some really basic stuff, and just type in some notes for yourself so that you know what to go back to. Maybe you remember something about a vaccine. Be like, okay, so vaccine. Just type that in quick. Okay. All right, and the last piece, because now you've given your strong opinion about which advancement was the most important. Then you've used evidence from the information that I've given you. Now you need to explain why that evidence backs up your claim. So explain your reasoning. You can use this sentence stem. This shows that it had the greatest impact because blank. Okay, so why is that evidence important in showing that your claim is true? Okay, so write some quick notes or write your sentence if you like. Okay. All right, so hopefully that gives you a good start on your CER, and now you just have to go back to the slides and grab a little bit of information, and then you'll finish that up and turn it in to me. It's due Monday night as usual.